channel. My name is Christina and this is Knitting Books etc. So today I'm kind of answering a tag. So Noah recently did a video where he talked about 5 perfect books, and then Jordan also did one, and today I watched Jack's at Rambling the Raconteur doing his. And so I was tagged by Jordan to do this, and I was, as soon as tagged, I started thinking, what are my answers going to be? And for example, very recently there was a tag, I was tagged by Ross where they talked about books, good books with bad endings. And I really don't have answers for that. I think that I am a very cautious reader, and I only start reading a book that I'm almost sure I'm going to like from the beginning to the ending. It's just like when I buy something, I always read reviews of the product and compare products and compare prices. It takes me a long time to buy something, like for example a kitchen appliance or things like that. So but this, I started thinking and I said, well, why not pick some books that I know that when I read them they were perfect for me, and again I tried not to pick those obvious large books like the one I'm reading now, as you all know, The Divine Comedy, or a book that I like a lot but it's also very big, like Lord of the Rings. So I'm not going to talk about those obvious ones. I'm also not going to talk about any Shakespearean plays. Each of them for me is a world in itself, and I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about, let me see, 2 books I read recently. One book that I am going to show you just because it's a beautiful book and because it is for me a more effective book than another I read recently, and I'll talk about it. And then I'm going to show you one book, and the other I cannot show you because I don't have it in physical format. But it's a book I read when both books are, I read them when I was quite young. And so I'm going to talk about them. I don't remember much about them, but I remember that at the time I read them, they were perfect for me. So, one of the books, I have the Portuguese translation here, and it's by a Swedish author called Axel Munthe. I never hear people talk about this author or this particular book. This book I think I bought in a book fair that there's here in Lisbon annually, and I bought it because when I read this book for the first time, I was, I think, 11 or 12, maybe 11, 10, because it was after the Portuguese Revolution of 1974. Then in 1975, many of the ex-colonies became independent countries, and many people that live in those now independent countries came back to Europe, the metropolis as they used to call it, and they, at the beginning, so I had family that lived in Angola, and they were my mother's brothers and one sister. And when they came, at the beginning, many of these people, so it happened to almost every family in Portugal, we had people that came, they were even called retornados, meaning the returned, although the great majority of them were not returning, they were coming for the first time because they lived in Africa since they were born. Anyhow, what happened is that at the beginning, many of these people that come had to be So they lived with their families that they have here in Portugal, because many of them came with nothing. So at my home, my mother had many brothers and sisters, and I had lots of cousins at the time living at my house, and it was quite fun actually for a kid. And I have more than 40 first cousins, so imagine. And so and one of the persons who lived at my house were an uncle and his wife and daughter. This aunt, so she was my uncle's wife. She had a book, which was, I remember so well. It was an old book with a new cover that she asked someone to put new cover. It was a red hardback cover with golden foil letters, and the pages of the book were quite brownish already, because it was an old book, and it was this one. I read it, so I was 12 maybe, because this was in 1975. So I read that book for the first time at the time, and it was, for me, I remember that I loved the book. So I read it many, many times. Then my young aunt went to her own house, my uncle, my aunt, my cousin, so they then found a house for themselves, and I had to give the book back. I remember so well thinking this, well, my aunt, she doesn't even know she has this book, I could keep it. But I was a very honest girl, and so I said, no, I have to give it back. And so I gave it back. But I was always sad to part with that book, which I read several times at the time. So I found it at this book fair, and I bought it. I don't think I have read this particular edition of the book, but it's a book that I remember so well. It's a kind of autobiography, but with lots of fiction and other even magic sometimes, but it's quite interesting, and I loved it. I don't remember the great majority of the book, but there are, for example, there are details, like I remember at the beginning he mentions a nanny he had, that one thing I never forgot, that he said she had some pointed teeth, like a shark's teeth. And I remember imagining her with those pointy teeth. And so small details I never forget. And so what I want to do is, I think that I'm going to find, I'd like to find another translation, and I will be reading this book shortly. The other book that I also read when I was a little bit older, I think I was 14 or 15, and I remember very well that I was on holidays in Algarve at the beach, and I read that book there, and it was the Autobiography of Agatha Christie. And again, another book that I remember loving from the beginning to the end. So first of all, the time that she describes there, it's one of my favorite times. So it's the ending of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century, and she knows how to tell stories. The way she describes people in her life. Her father, for example, must be a very funny guy, very interesting guy, always happy. Her family, her details, like, for example, I remember that she mentions when she was young, she went to India as people, so she had to travel by ship and things like that. And then her life, her life as a writer. So she tells us how she started writing. She several times mentions episodes where she's writing a certain book. Then it's very interesting. Then she got married with an archaeologist, and she talks about her travels with him. Amazing book. I haven't read it for a long time, and so I want to reread it again, because I remember enjoying that book so much. So in a way, these two books were perfect books for me. More recently, I read this book here very recently. I finished it this month, and I started this month actually. So, and I think, well, I haven't read Wuthering Heights yet, so I have no idea. I'm going to read it this year too, because it's part of my participation in the Bronte project that Marisa from Bookish something, I blatantly Bookish. I always forget her channel name. So she at the beginning of the year decided that she was going to do this Bronte project where we read every novel by the Bronte sisters, and I hadn't read this one here, and I haven't read Wuthering Heights either. But from what I've read until now, I think this might become a favorite, or the favorite, I don't know. I liked it a lot. And what I think is that I read Agnes Grey as well, and Agnes Grey also shocked me a bit in how modern Anne Bronte was. I feel so sorry that these sisters died so young, all of them. I don't know, they were so gifted. And Anne Bronte was a very modern writer. The way she talks about issues like the role of women, the marriage, everything. They are. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel that she could be a person from today's world. Okay, I like this book a lot. I like the main character. She was a great character. There are other characters, and we have complex characters too, either in the good side or the bad side. They are not flat, they are very rounded characters, which I love a lot. And so I think this became my favorite Bronte. The other book I discovered thanks to BookTube. I remember that in one video, one of the Noah's lives on Friday night. Very nice. I like to watch those lives because of the community, not only the video itself, where Noah talks about some of his acquisitions and some of the books he read, but also all the people that participate in the comments, the live chat. I loved it, and I love it. I mean, but it's a little bit difficult for me because it's at 2 a.m. here where I live. Anyhow, in one of those videos, one book was mentioned, and then a group of people decided to read it, but they read this book, and the book was As I Lay Dying. So it was also a May read for me, and I had no idea what this book was and how it was. I just heard people saying that it was not or that the author is not a very easy author. I don't know. I remember that I even bought this Norton Critical Edition because I thought, well, these editions have normally lots of notes and essays and things like that. If I don't understand anything about the book, I may use those. Well, I didn't need to use them, but although I am reading some of the essays here because I found them and it's not only essays. For example, there are some interviews with the author, and there are some interviews about this book, so quite interesting actually. But I love this novel. It's I talked about it here in the channel already, but just some. It's a very short. What I love about this is that it's so clever, I think, because and what I mean is that it's not the topic itself. There are lots of things that we could talk about, but it's not. It's what I think it's clever is that in so short chapters, everything is in the mind of the narrators. There are several, 15 I think, but some chapters have one line. Still, I could see everything, like it was very visual for me actually, as if I were watching a film. And I don't know how to describe it, but it makes sense from the beginning to the end, in my view. And it's perfect. I don't know how he did this, how clever the author was. Because the way the book is constructed is for me the first thing that makes it perfect. Then of course are the characters, their stories, how we, just by watching the thoughts of each character, we have an idea about each of the characters. That's fantastic. I think this book is fantastic, and I am already looking forward to rereading it. Finally, I'm sorry, forgot to bring something to drink, and my throat is getting dry. A book that I read recently was Slaughterhouse-Five, and I liked the book, but it was not that great book I was expecting. And one of the things, or one of the ideas I had is that it was an anti-war book. And yes, we see some of the we see how war is awful and miserable, and but to me, I have a book which for me it's one of the most effective anti-war books I ever read, and it's a poetry compilation. So this book, which I think it's very beautiful, although the flap is already damaged, I don't know why and how, is this one here. And Poetry of the Great War. And I remember when I was at university studying some of the Great War poets, some of them died during the Great War, which is such a useless war, and 8 million people died, and they were, many of them, 17, 18 years old. So this book always brings me to tears when I read this, because first of all, the book is very beautiful. Let me show you. So you have several images of, and also drawings. So pictures, paintings, drawings, and example here. And then you have the poems of several famous First War poets. Many of them died in here. So you have I cannot see now. I haven't brought my glasses. Rupert Brooks, Wilfred Owen, Rudyard Kipling. His son died. It's very sad. So when you read this, I think that it's much more effective for me, the impact that the war has in the world, in the people, in each one. The boys who were there, their families at home, everything. It's a lovely book, beautiful book, and I normally pick it up in November when it's the 11th of November, the Armistice Day. I tend to pick it up and read some of these poems, and they always make me cry. It is, for me, even thinking about a book normally makes me feel emotional, because it is a great picture of the horrors of war in a beautiful way, actually. So this is the book here. And so these were my 5 books that I chose to talk about. Again, as Jack in the Reveling Raconteur said, they are not my favorite books. They are not even, I don't know, they are 5 books I like a lot. And now I'm still trying to finish 2 big books this month, but I finished many of them. I will talk about that at the end of the month. I have also read some books for the Midrash, maybe Midrash. The rest, as a life update, I now officially look like a monster, Frankenstein monster. I had my 3 operations, one here, then you have several holes here because I had another arthroscopic operation. I have one in my legs, so I also had my 2nd shot of the COVID-19 vaccine. So I am now starting to move my right arm, so I hope that my knitting will be back soon. At least I feel like my knitting mojo is returning. These were very uncharacteristic months in my life, because I had never spent a day without knitting for years and years and years. And now I have been actually not doing it for a long time. So I'm going to take I also didn't bring my phone, so I don't remember the channels I subscribe to, so many channels, but let me take Mason. I don't remember his the channel's name, but I will write down on the description box. And I'm going to take who else? Tom in Tom L.A. books, and Rose in Skeleton About the Books. And that's it for me today. See you next time.